The actions and decisions of this individual are so unbelievable that when we talk about them, you might think we are discussing the royal decisions of centuries past. Yet, astonishingly, this person is our contemporary and commits these acts right in the 21st century. This individual is the strangest, most autocratic, and most mysterious political figure the world has ever seen, a character intertwined with power and brutal savagery that relentlessly challenges the world. The simplest act for this person is issuing a death warrant, not for the execution of guilty individuals, but for those with trivial and insignificant mistakes. Today, we intend to discuss the most bizarre death warrants issued by the leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un. Coming to power, before reviewing the death warrants issued by Kim Jong-un, it should be noted that this individual's bloodthirstiness is not limited to his reign. In fact, it was not Kim Jong-un who was supposed to succeed his father and take the helm of North Korea, as he was not the eldest son of the family. According to the law, it was his older brother who should have followed in their father's footsteps and assumed power. However, in a highly suspicious turn of events, the older brother was assassinated with nerve gas, paving the way for Kim Jong-un's rise to power. It is certainly clear to everyone who is behind this assassination, and there is no need to point fingers. The defense minister's execution, during one of the meetings where the North Korean leader was discussing the country, the defense minister briefly closed his eyes. Kim assumed that his minister had fallen asleep during his speech, which led to his extreme anger. He ordered the defense minister to be thrown to the ground in the city center, in front of hundreds of thousands of officials, and shot at point-blank range. After this execution, the only remnants of the defense minister's body were small pieces scattered across the square. Following this brutal execution, Kim Jong-un ordered that news and images of the execution be broadcast across all media in the country so that everyone would learn a lesson and be aware of the vengeful nature of the North Korean leader. Execution for encouragement. You might think that the defense minister should not have closed his eyes during the leader's speech, but you should know that Kim has issued death warrants for even more trivial actions against his own relatives. At the end of one such meeting, Kim issued a death warrant for his uncle simply because he was not encouraging enough. Strangely, Kim has issued many death warrants on the same accusation. Encouraging Kim is governed by one of the strictest laws in North Korea. Interestingly, one of the actions that can lead to a death sentence in North Korea is failing to encourage the North Korean leader. In fact, encouraging the leader has its own strict and specific rules. Encouragers must cheer with all their might and are not allowed to stop until their palms are red and swollen. Otherwise, they will certainly be executed. The aunt's husband's coup, Kim did not only issue execution orders for his uncle and brother, he ordered the execution of his aunt's husband simply because he suspected he might attempt a coup against him using the military. This was despite having no credible evidence to support his suspicion of a coup, and he issued the death warrant immediately after his first suspicion, without even issuing a command for the slightest inspection, investigation, or interrogation. However, what is even stranger than this decision is the method of execution he chose for him, a method that might be considered obsolete even in the Middle Ages. Kim threw his aunt's husband naked into a cage with 120 hungry hunting dogs, dogs that had not eaten anything for 5 days, and it is obvious what happened to his aunt's husband. But this was still not the end of Kim's madness. At the same time, he ordered that military leaders, along with Kim's aunt, watch the execution in his presence, as was customary, and observe the execution process that lasted about an hour. During this execution, it was natural for Kim's aunt to be unhappy watching her husband's execution, and her displeasure became a reason for her own execution. Kim considered her expression of discontent as betrayal to the regime, and ordered that a cup of poison be forced upon her. Certainly, the method of Kim's aunt's execution was much more merciful compared to previous executions. However, If you think the reason for her execution was trivial, you should know that after the defense minister's execution by firing squad in the city center, he decided to execute this individual's close friend, the Minister of Public Security, for having a close and deep relationship with the defense minister. But the method of execution he chose for this person marked an escalation in the unchecked violence of this autocrat. He decided to carry out the execution himself using a flamethrower. Revenge executions. If you think that by following the bizarre rules in North Korea you can escape the wrath of the country's leader, you are gravely mistaken. Approaching this individual always carries the risk of death and execution. Better than anyone else, Kim's former girlfriend realized this. Kim's former girlfriend, who was also a famous singer, continued her career after separating from Kim but could only produce one more music video. After the release of this song, she was accused by the North Korean leader of producing obscene films, and a death warrant was issued against her. But this was not the end of Kim's revenge executions. In one instance, he issued death warrants for 15 road construction and forestry workers due to dissatisfaction with the progress of a project. Even after the completion of the country's airport project, he executed the supervising engineer simply because he did not like the airport's design. However, if you think that execution in North Korea is the worst form of punishment, you should know that you are sorely mistaken. There are sentences in North Korea that make the death sentence in a cage with dogs seem like a generous favor. Sentences of imprisonment in forced labor camps. One of the most unbelievable sentences that can be issued against a human being. The sad part of this story is that these prison facilities hold individuals who have attempted to escape from this cruel dictatorship. The malice does not stop at imprisoning these individuals. Such criminals not only face imprisonment themselves, but all their family members, including their grandparents, are also imprisoned and sent to these prisons, a punishment far removed from dignity and humanity to deter people from escaping this unbearable hell. Camp 22. Camp 22 is a prison in North Korea that, according to reports published in 2012, was said to have been closed, or it seems that way. This camp is an incredible place of torture and execution, and it can be said that it is the most protected part of North Korea, surrounded by mountains ranging from 400 to 700 meters high. Descriptions from some of the prison guards about this prison state, that walking through the soulless hallways and tunnels of this prison is like participating in a festival where the mannequins are prisoners resembling skeletons and dwarfs who walk in a paralyzed and disheveled manner. According to former guards, about 30% of the prisoners in Camp 22 have deformities that cannot be overlooked. For example, bulging eyes, severed noses, and multiple bruises and tears on their faces and bodies, most of which are the result of tortures inflicted for the amusement and laughter of the guards. And the unbelievable thing is that around 2,000 of these prisoners, despite having lost limbs, walk through these hallways with the signs of torture clearly visible on their bodies. Prisoners in this prison are forced to work from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and can only eat 2 180-gram meals made from corn. The food situation in this prison is so dire that prisoners resort to eating rats, snakes, and frogs. And even at times when these animals become scarce, they turn to eating insects that gather in the toilets. This dire and unbelievable situation leads to the deaths of 1,500 to 2,000 people each year in these prisons. The most unbelievable aspect of these prisons is that a significant portion of the prisoners are children under 10 years old. And you would be surprised to know that some of the prisoners in this prison are even infants, children, and infants who are imprisoned not for their own crimes, but solely because one of their relatives attempted to escape from North Korea. But the situation gets even worse. By Kim Jong-un's order, the only holiday for the prisoners in this camp is New Year's Day, and they must work hard every other day of the year, under conditions without any safety equipment, which leads to many accidents and the deaths of numerous prisoners. But it becomes even more terrifying when a fire breaks out in this camp. During a fire, the cell doors are locked by the guards, and no prisoner is allowed to exit, leaving them to burn alive. After the fire is extinguished, the charred bodies are transported by truck to large furnaces to be completely turned to ash. In Camp 22, all guards are trained to believe that the prisoners in this place have no sense of humanity and are even less than animals, and they are encouraged to treat the prisoners like animals. In this prison, unimaginable acts are committed by the guards, vile and satanic acts such as the rape of children and women, beatings, and even the amputation of prisoners at will. One of the guards even confessed to killing 31 members of 5 families due to one of their friends' unsuccessful escape attempt. However, despite the harsh working conditions in Camp 22 or even the deteriorating food situation in this prison, prisoners have no right to protest whatsoever. If they commit such mistakes, bizarre and severe tortures await them. These tortures are divided into 5 groups and are approved for the prisoners by the head of the prison. These 5 methods of torture are as follows. Water torture. In this method, protesting prisoners are forced to stand on their toes in a tank filled with cold water that reaches just below their noses for 24 hours without complaint. Hanging. In this method, the protesters are hung naked, and during this time the guards beat the prisoner. Knee torture. Undoubtedly, this method is one of the worst tortures inflicted on prisoners. In this method, a tight rubber band is wrapped around the prisoner's knees, forcing them to kneel on the ground, and after a while, with the blood flow to their legs blocked, they become permanently paralyzed. Pigeon torture. In this method, prisoners are hung by their hands, which are tied behind their backs. The last method, this method, which is also a source of entertainment for the guards, involves the guards using prisoners as practice opponents, with the difference that the prisoners are not allowed to defend themselves. But the difficulties do not end with these tortures. If any of the prisoners are employed in projects related to the military or government, after the project is completed, they are all executed. However, the term execution in this prison is a joke. Prisoners are subjected to experimental surgeries under the knives of medical students, allowing these surgeons to master their skills by working on the bodies of these prisoners. However, according to North Korea, this prison was closed in 2012, yet the global community and human rights activists continue to seek information and events that have occurred in this prison. Thank you for staying with us to the end of the video. Goodbye.